Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Words, Images, and Worlds. Absolutely delighted on this episode to be joined by author and creator Jack Purcell. Jack, thank you so much for jumping on. You have an incredible space, which I've already been admiring, and you are something of a routine podcaster, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jason. I always appreciate it when people take interest in what I've done. It's been
Mhm.
an awesome ride for me. It's something where I've checked off a lot of boxes, and I've still got more to check off. So my hope is it's upward and onward.
Nice, nice. Yes, I appreciate your work in comics. Love it. Gotham Underground, one of my favorite works of yours, as well as the JSA classified or unclassified. Is it classified or un?
No, I think you got it. You got it. I think it was
Yeah,
JSA classified. Yeah, I worked on 3 issues of that.
yeah, with Dr. Midnight being a
Yeah.
favorite character of mine.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was a lot of fun. That was a cool gig.
yeah. The mood, the atmosphere in that book is just really unique, and anything in the Bat universe, I can appreciate and enjoy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's really the reason I got into comics. And I'm glad you mentioned Gotham Underground because it really is I'm not big on favorites, by the way. I'm probably annoying like that. My kids think I'm annoying, but um Gotham Underground was probably, if I had to pick one, my favorite DC project. It was about a year of my life. And it always
Uh,
reminded me of the old 70s Batman family comic book for anyone who's
mhm.
familiar with that, where each month it was kind of like a surprise, which I think is something in art in general that tends to be missing these days, is like that element of surprise. And I
Yeah,
loved how like one issue could be featuring Batgirl, and then maybe you'd get a story about Alfred and the Joker. And then the next one, it's Batman and Green Arrow, and then something like, Birds of Prey, whatever it might be. But I always really enjoyed that, and I always loved the bad guys too.
yeah,
So this really focuses on the characters other than Batman. I mean, he actually doesn't turn up in costume until the last couple of issues.
yeah. It's such a creative universe of characters with that Rogues Gallery, and I'm glad you mentioned that series from the '70s because I used to find those at like a used bookstore in the small town I grew up in, so I can totally see the connections there.
Yeah, I had a blast. I mean, for me growing up, I was one of those kids who I always knew what I wanted to do. I found
Yeah.
myself lying in a giant Batman coloring book and thinking like, yeah, this is it. Like, it doesn't get cooler than Batman. And that was really my goal, was to work on Batman. So from a very young age, I knew that I had to do something with this Batman character.
Yeah, yeah. What was your introduction to the world of comics? Was there an issue, film, or anything like that that resonates as being like the initial draw?
It's kind of interesting because my father really kind of instilled the love of comic books in me. He was
Hmm.
into comic books growing up, and unfortunately was a victim of the many mothers of America who, when their sons went off to war, threw their stuff away.
Hmm.
So he told me he had Superman #1. He was all about Action Comics and detective, and
Wow.
he loved all that stuff. And so the first comic book that he bought me was Brave and the Bold, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the number at this point,
Oh,
but
that's fine. That's totally fine.
but it was Batman teaming up with Green Arrow, and it left a huge impression on me. I was like, "Oh, Green Arrow, like that's kind of cool. Like he's a fun character." And strangely enough, Green Arrow ended up being the very first character I worked on for DC Comics. And then Batman, of course, was what I had set out to do. So
Wow.
it's just interesting how it all comes around. But Batman was it. I was really a DC guy. Justice League, I was fascinated with Justice League as a really young kid. And then I discovered the Avengers and John Byrne and his
Yeah.
run, and then later Alpha Flight. And just from there, it was like a rocket ship. So I always liked the teams. The teams were always kind of my thing.
Hmm. Now, I was right there with you, getting locked into DC first. With I also don't remember the issue. I would have to look it up, but I know Mike Barron was the writer, and it was like a Batman annual. And shortly after that was World Without Heroes, the issue 3 that Bart Sears worked on, and from there it was the film, and then I expanded into Marvel as well. And yeah, I
Right.
have good memories of Alpha Flight from the 80s
Yeah.
also.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved Alpha Flight. And I remember not understanding why, but when I was a little kid, I'd be drawing Puck and he had the
Right.
big P on his chest. And I remember showing it to my mother, who was normally very supportive, but she looked at it, she's like, do we have to draw him? I was like, what do you have against Puck? You're like anti-Canadian? Like, what's going on? And she's like, well, the name sounds like something else. And at the time I
Ah,
was like, no, what are you talking about? I got to keep drawing Puck. There's a lot of hair.
yeah.
And yeah, it was funny. I didn't really understand what she was getting at that point, but that comic, man, John Byrne was just such a machine, and just him and George Perez were artists who really inspired me. Later, McFarlane was a guy who I feel
Mhm.
like I sort of took a lot of cues from.
Yeah, and Ed Brisson is about to relaunch Alpha Flight.
Oh, is that
I
right?
think in like a month or two, there's a new number one of that series coming. So, yeah, kind of
Neat.
cool to pull those teams out and see what directions they go in, because not everybody goes to Alpha Flight as like a top must read, but it's cool. I like it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like these days, I really have a problem with mainstream comics in general, and
Hmm.
I certainly love all the characters. I mean, it's what I grew up on. Image Comics is almost exclusively what I buy, aside from comics on Kickstarter. I just feel
Yeah.
like Marvel, especially, has just gotten to be like a sham. So Alpha Flight will have a number one. They'll do 12 covers and all the nonsense, and
Hmm.
then they'll end it like at 12 or 13 because they don't keep people's interest, and then they'll launch it again and we get a new number one.
Right.
Man, it just feels like you're not being on the level with me. I feel like you're
Yeah.
scamming me and all this number one stuff. It's not a collector's item, and I think most people understand the idea of supply and demand at this point. But God, it's really discouraging with them killing the characters to bring back a replacement, try to turn
Yeah.
that into a franchise, and a year later bring back the character, and it's like guys are kind of double dipping now. Like, really?
Right.
I
Yeah.
struggle with that, so I don't buy any Marvel stuff anymore. And I have a funny story depending on what you want to get into, but
Yeah. By all
I
means. By all
I've
means.
certainly burned my bridges with Marvel.
Beyond what you just said. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they don't care whether or not I buy them, but yeah,
Yeah.
the comic book industry, I think, depending on how interested you are in sticking with that, I feel like the comic book industry is clearly falling apart. It has been for a long time. They stubbornly won't change and adapt. So they're
Hmm.
one
Hmm.
scratching their heads wondering why they're failing. Um, but it really feels like, again, I think Image has such a great sense of what the future of comics are. Like if you
Yeah.
wanted to pick up the first trade of a a new title that you weren't familiar with, a lot of times they would have a 9.99 price tag, and you could get that same thing that you might pay 17 or 18 for at Marvel for
Hmm.
10, and feeling like, hey, like I could drop $10 to check this out. And
Yeah.
I remember picking up so many things that I normally might not have. And I just thought it was awesome. Marvel, I feel like you're going to see so many, not only Marvel, DC also now, but you're going to see so many of the top creators leaving Marvel and DC for Image. And you've seen that Tony Daniel,
Oh yeah.
Scott Snyder, all these guys, the best of the best, for the most part, are all leaving Marvel and DC. They certainly don't want to create any interesting characters for these guys.
They don't
But
own them.
yeah,
Yeah.
I might, maybe I'll get a thank you at the end of a movie. Maybe if
Right.
I'm really lucky, I get
Maybe.
invited to the screening, possibly. I mean, it just really feels like a big slap in the face. And Marvel, I just sporadically have worked for Marvel. I've actually done more Marvel stuff for Disney than I have for
Hmm.
Marvel Comics,
Hmm.
and I feel very grateful to have done anything with them, because for me, that was my life goal, was to contribute to this medium.
Yeah.
But I remember Marvel contacted me at one point, towards the end of really when I was steadily working in comics, and asked me if I wanted to work on an X-Men project. And I thought, yeah, like I grew up on X-Men. The John Byrne
Hmm.
run was what really got me into that whole bunch of characters. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. I'm on board. And they said, well, we have to cut your page rate by X amount of dollars. And I was like, wait a minute. So I've been doing this for 12 years,
Yeah.
and you're offering me the biggest book you have, maybe the only profitable book, really, and you're going to cut my rate?
Yeah.
And I had some
Yeah.
choice words that I don't think I could probably say in your podcast, but I told him, please don't ever contact me again.
Yeah.
I
That
mean,
that is definitely a slap in the face.
Yeah, and it really felt like an insult. And I just told him, hey, you got plenty of young, desperate people who want to break in. Like they can have it, and
Hmm.
maybe it'll be a good thing for them. It's something they can build their career on.
Yeah, yeah. We were talking briefly before I hit record about the AI craze and the idea that you would think that you could capture something through a computer generation that you couldn't capture in a human artist is just bizarre to me. And I say that as an English teacher who's going to have these conversations with high school kids and say, hey, you can bring an authentic voice and experience that's going to be so much better than kind of the form or the formula that you're going to get through an automatically generated response.
Yeah, I mean it's plagiarism, really. I mean they're stealing from all these artists that have trained this AI very well. I mean it's you get a mixed bag. If I don't know if you've tried it out, but
I
uh,
actually haven't.
it's pretty funny. It's pretty
Yeah.
funny. I've taught high school art for over 2 decades, so I have a lot of experience with kids plagiarizing, and
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
now with AI, I tell them like, look, I'm not one of these teachers who's talking about banning it. I think you should explore it, try it,
Yeah.
like, but don't have it rich paper for me. And I explained to them, I was like, look, I'm speaking to you as an informed person who's not in a panic mode, not telling you that you should never use this, but I asked it to write a 2-page paper about me.
Hmm.
And it was really interesting. About half of it was really accurate, and the other half was totally erroneous. So I
Yeah.
told them, like, not only does the quality of the writing vary, but the factual information varies. And it probably in 5 years, this is going to be a great thing. But right now, like, don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm imagining the kind of assignment that I could give, which seems like it might be me focused, but what would an AI say about Jason Dehart? Yeah, since especially there's like a Jason Dehart that does chemistry, and I think there's a Jason Dehart that does extreme, like fighting, and I'm neither one of those people. I would not be good at either of those things. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you could put like a keyword in though, right? And so
Hmm.
like, like
Hmm.
English teacher or something like that. And it'll tune in, I mean, it's much like the internet. If you ask for specific information, you'll generally get it. So
Yeah.
that's one of those things, because I made sure when I asked it to write the paper about me, I put DC Comics, so I didn't get a paper about the Converse sneakers.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And you're talking about Image Comics, which I feel like that's a legend that has been around for a while of people that said, "Hey, let's go start our own thing and let's make it creator owned." And even the directions that stories can take at Image Comics is so refreshing, and it doesn't feel like as much of a quick grab like the death of Miss Marvel a week or two ago.
Oh, I mean,
I'm
come
like,
on, give me a break. I
why?
mean, yeah, it really is pathetic. I mean, it's a business strategy that they've proudly boasted about. I think it was every 6 months they're going to kill a main character, Rocket Raccoon, goes on and on.
Yeah.
But I feel like Image Comics, like I kind of treat comic book publishers the way I do people. I don't have time for dishonest people. I don't have time for nonsense. So I value honesty and fun and people who are authentic and maybe weird and different. I love that stuff. So, you know, uh, Image Comics treats me honestly. And if they're going to take
Yeah.
a hiatus, they're going to say, hey, we're not going to fool around and lie to you that this is coming out monthly. We're going to say, let's treat it like a season of a TV show, which I think is brilliant, really smart
Hmm.
way.
Hmm.
People
Hmm.
accept that. So you're going to do 6 issues for 6 months, take a 3 month break, and then we're back on track. I love that. If you're going to be
Yeah.
upfront with me, fantastic. Like I'm on board, but I really feel insulted by, I think it's you mentioned JSA. I believe JSA is 4 months behind right now.
Wow.
And Jeff
Yeah.
Johns is the writer. And it's like, weren't you the vice president not that long ago? And your book is 4 months late. There's no excuse for it. There's none. And for them to be pulling that on fans, who are disappointed month after month, like, hey, got that first issue, we're invested, we're interested, and you're making us wait for this. I mean, to me, it's just there's no integrity there, and people could argue whatever they want, but it's not about the pandemic. It's not about
Hmm.
printers.
Hmm.
It's about just dishonesty.
Yeah. Well, and I think about like Saga, which is this book that goes on a break, and the amount of investment in the story, and the way after a couple of months of not having that book, you go, "Oh, it's back," and there's nothing. there's nothing wrong with that at all, of saying, hey,
Right.
we've taken some time and we're going to put out the best thing that we possibly can. I actually like that approach as well.
Huge, huge. Yeah, me too. Huge respect for it. Again, if you're going to be upfront about it, like even if I wasn't a creator, like I'd probably be able to understand that it isn't a machine that cranks this stuff out. It takes time
Yeah.
and effort, and there's all kinds of setbacks that can happen. So yeah, like take 3 months, get caught up so it doesn't look rushed, and people will keep buying it. I mean, look at how I don't know what number Saga's on, but it's in the 50s, right?
Yeah, it's 50s or maybe 60s. It's been around a while. It's been
So I
around a
mean that
while.
that says something, right? Because I mean, like how many comics that are non-Marvel DC last that long now? Even a lot of their books, they can't make it past 13, 14 issues.
True, true. So as you've been in the industry, any folks you particularly appreciate? Anybody who, like at the end of the movie credits, there's that list of like, we'd like to thank these people. Any of those kind of warm collaborations that you've had that you would go to anytime?
Oh yeah, I mean lots of them. I've been super fortunate. I mean I could go on and on, but for the sake of not boring you to tears, some of the people who I had the best collaborations with were the people I understood the least when I started, like editors, because at
Hmm.
first it almost just seems like the editor's your teacher who's making you do your work on time and wagging their finger at you, making sure that you're handing those pages in. And sometimes they do, but Bob Schreck was someone who is just invaluable to me, like was so generous with his time and just a funny, nice guy, like really
Yeah.
terrific and was super honest with me. He would tell me like, hey, you got to work on this and here's why. And he would show me examples. And
Hmm.
man, I can't even tell you how much that guy helped me out. And I really appreciate him. Mike Martz was another guy who I'd always heard good things about from other creators, and I remember at Marvel trying to work with him. I specifically wanted to work on something with Mike Martz, and it never worked out. I don't know, it was one of those things. And then he went to DC,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
immediately I sought him out, and we just hit it off right away. Just personally, I liked him a lot, and we got along. And he was like, "I think I can keep you busy for a while," and he did.
Nice,
And
nice.
again, straight shooting, honest guy. Bob Schreck, Mike Martz, two guys who I could say like never told me a lie, were always straight shooting and
Hmm.
honest and funny,
Hmm.
like great people. And I really enjoyed all my collaborations with them. And so many creators. Alex Sanchez was the artist who worked on a couple issues of JSA Classified you mentioned with Dr.
Hmm.
Midnight. I think it was
Hmm.
number 23 and 24. Super cool guy. Still keep in touch with him. Really great dude. No ego, like really a collaborator. And that's
Yeah,
rare because there's some other people I can't say that about that I worked with who ego was a problem and it
yeah.
became really problematic and limited the amount of work I wanted to do with them. And I respected them as creators, but as people, it came a point where I was like, for me, it's about serving the work. Like I don't need the ego
Right,
stroke because honestly, nobody knows who penciled, who winked what. Like they don't know I redrew that hand for you. You're probably going to get the credit for it. And I don't need it. I don't need the validation, but you should be
right.
thanking for that. Like don't give me a hard time. And there's so many stories where, inkers come in and, save the day
Hmm.
and certainly
Hmm.
the pencilers are doing the heavy lifting. So in no way would I want to take that away from them or distort that. But it's very interesting from a fan standpoint. Like you don't really know who did the pencils, who did the inks, and who and the colors. I mean, the colorists add so much to the product, and
Yeah.
sometimes you just get that perfect synergy between creators, and that's where, like to me, that's been magical, and I've been lucky to have that a few times, and people who I think we just all brought out the best in each other.
Yeah, yeah. When you look at a book, I mean, you see those names, and it is this collaboration. And then there are people that do kind of fill-ins and things too, as you mentioned, that aren't necessarily even listed there, that came in at the last minute to help whatever person sort of finish the issue on time or touch up this problem. And I didn't realize that. I didn't know that before I started doing the show. But I mean, it's a collaboration kind of experience. And when you look at the finished product, like hopefully it all comes together visually in a way that succeeds, from the coloring to the inking to the penciling to the writing and everything that's there.
Yeah, it's challenging because there's so many stories I could tell about collaborating, like sharing a book where I inked half and someone else did the other half, and they were out of order, and it was a
Hmm.
miracle it turned out as well as it did. And it speaks to the professionalism of everyone involved. But I had doubts. I was like, man, I remember working with Mark Bagley on an issue of Batman, which was like my main goal in comics was to work on the Batman title. And to work with
Hmm.
Mark Bagley was extra
Yeah.
cool because I really like his stuff and often wondered, like, could I stand out with him as a collaboration? And he seemed to like what we did. But I was working with Rob Hunter, who inked the other half, and I didn't want to ink like him
Hmm. Hmm.
because we have very different styles, if you want to use that word. And it all worked out. Like nobody, I read lots of reviews just because I wanted to see the hard truth. Like, were people struggling? Was there like a big disparity from page to page? And it seemed to work out really well. So
Good, good.
yeah, there's been times I definitely was sweating about what was going to happen with the finished product, but I just have been extremely fortunate.
Yeah, yeah, and Mark Bagley, just from, I mean, I've literally talked to the man like 5 minutes at a con. Just seems like the nicest man and the nicest individual to sort of respond with, and yeah, just a
Yeah,
very kind guy.
yeah, I have nothing but good things, and again, my limited interactions with him were great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's another thing too that I've learned is that very often people that work on a book might not necessarily even meet each other,
Yeah,
because you're putting things through the mail and or online now, and it's a whole process. And book illustrations and writers, it seems to be the same kind of story of like we might contact each other a few times. You held up Gotham Underground. Any other? Yeah, you said you brought props. So any other books that you want to make sure to mention as like the milestones, the passion projects, and all of that sort of thing.
yeah, I've got two of them. If it, I don't want to take up too much time, you can kind
No,
of
no,
let me
you're
know
good. You're
if
good.
I'm running off at the mouth, because one of my flaws is not that I have a lack of things to say. So two things, and one was like when I set out to do comics, I would tell everyone I'm working on Batman, and that was everyone knew who knew me knew that's where I was heading.
Hmm.
But the other thing was, and I didn't tell people this, even my best friends, I just kept it to myself, was that I wanted to work with Stan Lee.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
but I thought, like, who am I? Like, why would I be able to do that? And after a while, it actually ended up happening. And my birthday is April Fool's Day, which is unfortunate. So I'm used to sort of fending off attempts to, get one over on me.
Right,
And my
right.
my agent at the time had called me, and I was just waiting for whatever, his line was. But he asked me if I wanted to work with Stan Lee. And then I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, like, okay, hit me with it. And
Hmm. Hmm.
but he's like, no, really, like there's this short list of artists that he wants to work with on this project, and you're on it. And I couldn't
Wow.
believe it. I'm like, really? Like, so sure enough, like I can't explain how or why, but somehow something I did must have caught his eye, and got to work with a bunch of other people who I was very friendly with and respected. Guys like Mark McKenna, who's somebody I've collaborated with several times on a few different projects, and I read a ton of his stuff and admired what he was doing for years. Mike Lilly,
Hmm.
all
Hmm.
kinds of guys who do great work. But it ended up that Stanley was doing this project with the NHL called the Guardian Project, and one of my prized possessions is the copy of that book that Stan signed for me.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And
Wow.
this was so cool. It was a really interesting story. Again, like it's probably not enough time to really get into a lot of this, but a very inexperienced publisher who didn't understand the crazy world of comics and thought that they were going to do really well with this project by selling little 5-page sort of ash cans almost, and
Mm.
then changed their minds, smartened up, and decided they were going to make it into a trade, like a graphic novel, but they were
Hmm.
only selling it at hockey games. You can't get this in stores. Like if you look up the Guardian Project on eBay, you'll
Hmm.
see copies of this like $200-300 because it's
Wow.
hard to find. And one of the cool things about this is I got to create a villain with Stanley, and it's on this page. That was wild.
Oh, that's cool.
So for me, I got to do both pencils and inks in this and work on a few different stories. So it was a really huge deal for me personally, and myself and some other artists with Stan got to present this project with the NHL at the New York Comic Con. and it was in like their biggest hall. It was craziness. People were swarming to get in there. It was packed, and Stan Lee went up there. It was like my hero. I was like, if I make it as long as this guy, whatever age
Yeah.
he was at the time in his 80s, like he went up on stage and every other human would walk up the stairs to go on the stage. And he grabbed the railing and pulled himself up in one step. And I'm like, this guy's the best. And
Right.
I remember being so not disappointed meeting him and being like, man, like here's the guy you really want to be cool. Like when you meet Stanley, you don't want him to be a jerk. And he was
Right.
exactly what I hoped he would be. He was just super cool guy.
That's cool. What a great testament to him too. What a great testimony about him. So,
Yeah.
man, you worked on Batman, you worked with Stan Lee. Like, what could possibly top that? Like,
Yeah, I mean that was it for me. Like boxes checked, I'm done. Like, and
yeah.
I got to work for Disney and do a bunch of fun stuff for them, and more so than anything, that was a fun time because my kids were little, and I ended up being a hero to them because I worked on all these this artwork that ended up being on coloring books and activity books, and they reused these images. They would flip them and do all kinds of stuff. So that was fun. But
Cool.
really, one of my favorite things I got to do was after I told you about the whole X-Men offer, I kind of was tired of working for Marvel and DC, and I feel like I did what I set out to do, and it was just feeling repetitive at that point. Like I was having fun, and it's great to get paid to do this kind of stuff, but it
Hmm.
wasn't the same anymore, and I ended up having this writer contact me, and he had some scripts optioned in Hollywood, but nothing ever actually got made. And he was really frustrated. And he had this really cool story that his agent told him he couldn't do in Hollywood because it was Christmas themed and you can't mess with Santa Claus. But he thought it would
Um,
make a cool graphic novel. So he found out that I was local, and we ended up creating this create our own graphic novel, which was exactly what I needed, was to be in full control, sink or
hmm.
swim. It's on me. It's like tennis. I always enjoy playing singles tennis because there's no one else to blame. If
Right.
you win or lose, it's all you. And so it felt really good. And Nathan Graham Davis is his name, and he's like truly the best collaborator I ever had in terms of no ego. And we had an agreement at the beginning, like ego's at the door. This is
Yeah.
a collaborative effort. We're in this together, and we're going to make the coolest thing that we can. And he truly lived up to his end. Hopefully I did too. And we did Malice and Mistletoe, which was God, I think it was like 144 pages, graphic novel that was like a twisted Christmas tale that
Nice.
Nate's agent told him he couldn't do, but we could do it in comics. And lots of cool people wrote little forwards to me, like Brandon Montclair, who created Devil Dinosaur and
Oh
Moon
yeah.
Girl. Mark
There's
McKenna,
McKenna. Hmm.
yeah, who we mentioned, yeah. So some people in film. It was super cool. It was black, white, and red and green. So it wasn't like Sin City that was black, white, and red, but it
Mm.
was like the whole Christmas thing. And it was just really fun. We got to kind of cut loose and just do anything we wanted. Luckily, there were a lot of people who were also generous with their time, gave us their feedback, and we did a Kickstarter. It got funded, and we had tons of adventures. We got held in Canada overnight. They wouldn't let us back over the border. I mean, there was all kinds of stuff I learned throughout
Wow.
this
Wow.
process. But the other part was like we own this, and we could do anything we want. We
Hmm.
got to do some merchandising, and one of the things Nate and I had in common is we both love whiskey, and we ended up licensing it to have our own brand of whiskey, which we did for 3 years. So
Nice.
every December we'd have mistletoe, which of course we worked into the storyline that there's this whiskey, and it was had to be blood red. We talked to the people who were at this distillery, and our only concern was it's got to be blood red. Don't care really
Hmm.
what it tastes like, and we knew it was going to be good because we had sampled some of their work, and
Hmm.
it was awesome. That was like one of the most fulfilling things. Was it wasn't even about how much money there was in it. It was just about the fact that this is cool. Like this is our logo on a whiskey bottle that we merchandise, and people really loved it. We even had like
Hmm.
in the Kickstarter, we had little whiskey glasses with a logo on it, and people
Nice.
loved it because it wasn't the same old thing. It's like, okay, you got your foil variants and all the nonsense, but we had stuff that pertained to the story. It was fun and different. And for me, that's always what art should be, or comics got to be fun and a few
Hmm.
surprises. So we had some pinups in it, And I would like to think that the plot has lots of twists. It's not something you pick up and you're like, oh yeah, so that character is going to fall in love, that one's going to die.
Hmm,
You
hmm.
you don't know where it's going, and I do think universally people have felt that way. So that felt good.
Cool, cool. Very cool. Love the passion, love the direction. And we have just a few minutes before my unfortunately personal time Zoom drops. We can sign back in to finish up anything that we missed, but I know you're working outside of comics and you're doing a couple of projects. Anything that you want to hat tip there for listeners that they can check out that's in development or out in the world?
Yeah, thanks. No, definitely.
Hmm, hmm.
I'm a big fan of pro wrestling. I've always been fascinated with that culture. Been doing a lot of work with pro wrestlers, individual artwork, t-shirts, stuff like that. And I just started doing my own trading cards. Sorry. Um,
Oh,
so I've
I
been just
froze there for
started.
just a second. Sorry. Can you say that part again?
Sure. Yeah, I've just started creating my own set of trading cards of
Ah, love
professional
it.
wrestlers and a lot of different promotions, a lot of guys who've been on AEW. You've seen them. Del Miexo is actually one of the champions, and MLW, which is one of the larger organizations. So it's been really fun getting to work with these people. Some of the nicest people I've ever met. Really
Cool,
have
cool.
it's been awesome becoming part of that little world. Like I've kind of been accepted in it, and it feels good. Like people know who I am, and we have a mutual respect, which is really nice. I'm also working on a card game called Fugitive on the Run. I'm designing all the cards. It's got some really cool mechanics to it. On social media, it's Backyard Games One, and you can see some of the artwork there. And it looks like my comic book stuff. It isn't any huge departure, but really fun. So when you play the game, there's going to be a Kickstarter that I believe is launching in September. So I've got a lot of drawing left to do, and that's going
Yeah.
to be fun, something different that I haven't done before.
Well, thank you for taking some time to talk with me as you're finishing up a Kickstarter and doing all sorts of things. You said Backyard Games One.
Yeah, they're on Instagram. And my podcast, Faces and Heels podcast, is a lot of fun. We interview a lot of pro wrestlers. We just had Mother Endless on last week, who's kind of like a lot of people say they feel like she's kind of got an Undertaker vibe.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
really cool face paint mask, all the gear. She was awesome. We have Bobby Buffet on next week, who's been on Monster Factory, which is a sort of a documentary series on the world of pro wrestling on Apple TV. So that's been awesome too. Like for 3 years, we've had amazing guests and just had a blast. So getting to talk about wrestling has just been so much fun.
Lovely, lovely. And you can't go wrong with an Undertaker theme. I mean, one of the characters from that whole storyline that stands out being a kid that was all about that. So, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, very
yeah.
cool. Very cool. Well, Jack Purcell, thank you so much for taking some time. Did we miss anything that you want to make sure to share about?
If you're on Instagram or Facebook, please follow me at Jack Purcell Inc. INK. And I post a lot of artwork there, some fun stuff, random things. But it's always keeping you updated on whatever projects I'm working on.
Very, very cool. Very cool. I appreciate your work. Thank you for your work and your time, and thanks for a wonderful conversation.
Well, thank you. That was awesome.